What if our collective thoughts could actually trigger an earthquake? Seriously, what if there was a cosmic rulebook out there dictating the rise and fall of entire civilizations? Well, today, we're diving into a worldview that claims exactly that. And it argues that one single generation alive right now holds the key to humanity's future.
Right. We all know the science, the meteorology and geology behind why a tornado forms or why the ground shakes. But the source material we're digging into today isn't really interested in the how. It's asking a much, much bigger question. Why? And it proposes that the root cause isn't about tectonic plates or weather fronts, but something way closer to home. Us. So to really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. We'll start with prophecies, then explore this hidden cosmic rule, and connect it all to the power of human thought, which eventually leads us to a really surprising generational mission. Okay, let's start at the beginning, the source of this knowledge. So the whole foundation of this philosophy rests on a pretty bold claim. It's the idea that real prophecies aren't just educated guesses or good predictions. No, they are direct observations seen by spiritual leaders who, according to this view, have a special kind of sight that the rest of us just don't. So we're not talking about charisma or being a savvy politician here. The source argues that what truly makes these people leaders is an inherent spiritual power. So when they make a prophecy, they aren't predicting what will happen, they're reporting it. They're simply describing a future reality that, for them, they've already witnessed. Okay, so if these leaders can see the future, what's the system they're actually looking at? This brings us to the cosmic framework behind this whole philosophy. A fundamental principle it calls the 3 to 7 rule, and it's described as being the very operating system of nature itself. The core idea here is that nature works on this 3 to 7 rhythm. Think of it like this. Way back, there was an ancient 30% cycle of foundation building. That's when mountains were pushed up, continents were formed. But the era humanity just finished, that was a 70% cycle of contradiction, an age that was defined by human conflict, struggle, and all of our intellectual development. And here is where this theory gets incredibly specific. I mean, look at this timeline. The source pinpoints December 31st, 2012 as the exact moment that 70% era of human conflict was over. The claim is that on that very day, the fundamental operating system of nature literally shifted gears and we entered a brand new 30% cycle, an era of answers. Now, this whole idea of a cosmic cycle, it raises a huge question, right? What actually triggers the events inside these eras? If the 70% era was all about conflict, what was causing all those wars and disasters? Well, the answer, according to the source, isn't some external force. It's internal. It comes from the collective human mind. This right here is probably the most crucial concept in the entire philosophy. The source argues that our words, our thoughts, they aren't just these fleeting abstract ideas. They have literal physical mass. This accumulated energy, it claims, is a tangible force that directly acts upon the natural world. This slide basically lays out the chain reaction. It starts with collective human discontent, right? Frustration. That energy then builds up, accumulates into this powerful mass. And once that mass hits a certain tipping point, it transforms and has to express itself physically. So from this perspective, World War II wasn't ultimately caused by treaties or economics. It was the physical result of an enormous buildup of human frustration. But that makes you wonder, why? Why would the universe be designed to translate human negativity into actual disasters? Why create a 70% era that's defined by all this chaos? Well, according to the source, all that conflict wasn't just for nothing. It was a necessary setup for what was coming next. The logic here is that the 70% era was basically a giant problem-generating phase for humanity. Its purpose was to create every single conceivable conflict, question, and contradiction. All of our history, all our science, our philosophy, our turmoil, that was all just the necessary groundwork for the new 30% era, the time when we finally start finding the answers. So if the problems were global, where are the answers going to come from? And this is where the theory narrows its focus a lot. The source claims that after millennia of worldwide conflict, the solutions are destined to emerge from one very specific place, the Korean Peninsula. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. If a new era of answers is here, and those answers are going to come from Korea, who exactly is supposed to deliver them? The source doesn't leave it up to chance. It identifies a very specific group of people for this mission.
The source points to this line. It was reportedly from a national pledge taught to an entire generation of young Koreans, and it argues this wasn't just some simple patriotic slogan. It was, in fact, a kind of prophecy that was embedded in their education, basically programming them with a mission for the common prosperity of all humankind.
This group gets a title, the Analog Generation. They're described as the culmination of history, and not just culturally, but get this, biologically. The claim is that they represent a unique point in human development, making them perfectly suited to carry out this global mission.
So what makes this generation so special, according to the source? Well, it's their unique position in time. They were born after the Great Wars, so they didn't experience that horror directly. They grew up absorbing all of humanity's knowledge, from both the East and the West, in an analog world. They're a bridge between the old and the new. And that combination, the source claims, gave them the precise perspective needed to tackle global problems.
And so we end up right back where we began, with the power of thought. This entire cosmic framework, from natural laws all the way down to a generational mission, it all boils down to a very personal challenge. If the source is right, and our collective thoughts truly have the mass to shape reality, then it kind of forces us to ask, what answer are we individually contributing to the world?